And welcome to another episode of Patriots 4th and 2. I'm your host today, Derek Havens, and as always, Steve Balestrieri joining us. And we are both here as PatsFans.com bloggers. Today we'll be talking about the Patriots' thrilling victory to go to 2-6 here over the New York Jets. Always a good win, Steve. To win over the Jets is always just the cherry on top. Before we get into the game, we're also going to preview the Titans game. We're going to get into the Joshua Uche trade, the Drake Maye concussion. What players could the Patriots potentially move next? We're going to get into all that. But before we do anything, as always, Steve, how we doing, man?
We're doing good. I mean, hey, it's been a while since we got to talk about a win, right?
It's been, just a little while.
It's been a minute.
Only a month and a half. It's fine.
Yeah. So that part is great, especially, like you said, against the Jets, and to put a big nail, then it's not a stake in the chest, but it's a nail in their hide when it comes to making the playoffs. So, and that was a big nail because they were chalking this one up as a absolute win. I know the New York Post said the Jets should right the ship. That this was their cover on the Sunday sports page. Jets should right the ship against atrocious Patriots. So
there's a guy, Matt Miller, who many of our listeners probably know. It does a lot of draft work for ESPN, some great work. Before he was at ESPN, he was at Bleacher Report, and he used to do a podcast with himself, his brother Mello, and the gentleman named Connor Rogers. Connor, I think, this is going to be really high praise, but I think this much of him, and I kind of am digressing to get to my point, but people will connect the dots here in a second. Connor, I think, is like the next Field Yates. I think he's like an up and coming star. You know, he has great analysis. He works for, I know he works for SNY in New York. I know he works for PFF. He does a show with Trevor Sikkema it's like the NFL Stock Exchange for PFFs, where they talk great draft show. If anyone's listening, they want another podcast to talk about like draft all year round. Trevor and Connor do an amazing job on the PFF podcast. He does stuff for NBC for fantasy with Matthew Berry, who went from, what was that, ESPN, I think, to NBC. And he was on NBC. And anyway, he's a huge Jets fan, and he's all over the board. I think he's really coming up the ranks, and I really love his analysis. And he was on SNY with guys like Bart Scott and Damian Woody. And, there was another gentleman, I can't place his name. But he said that this was, well, Connor didn't say this, but one of the gentlemen said that this was the worst loss for the Jets against the Patriots ever. I think that might be a little hyperbolic, but I do think that people in New York think the sky is falling. And I thought that Connor specifically was just like, where else does New York go? And I don't want to make this show about like, okay, New York screwed up. The Patriots deserve to win. I'm still not 100% sure Ramondre crossed the goal line 100% at the end, but I'll take it. What was called, and the angles are the angles. But I thought the Patriots deserved to win that game. But Connor's point was, basically, like, what do the Jets do now? They basically tried to do what the Bucks did with Tom Brady, but failed, because they brought in a guy who they thought would, they put all the eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket, and they fired their coach. They fired coordinators. They brought in the interim coach. They never alleviated his role as defensive coordinator. They've traded for all of his guys. They gave basically Aaron Rodgers the key to the castle. And now you have him sulking, towel over the head on the sideline, which it's like good barbecue, Steve. You just want to lick your fingers. It was just amazing to watch, because I think Aaron Rodgers is a POS. But like, I just look, if you're a Jets fan, I don't see how you don't feel just extremely discouraged, because it's like, hey, we're going to trade for Devontae Adams. We're already all in. We have to go all in. And then you go and you lose a game with so many issues. I mean, the Patriots, we'll get to the Patriots here in just a second because we're a Patriot show. But I mean, Patriots fans, come on, lap it up with me a little bit. That was just fun to watch. The Jets were so dysfunctional. 3 timeouts in the first quarter. I mean, I've never seen that. I can't remember seeing an NFL team using all 3 timeouts in the first quarter. The procedural penalties, breaking the huddle at 11 seconds and then taking your time. It was so lackadaisical. How many delayed games? How many little issues did they have on offense? They are so disorganized, such a dysfunctional organization. Unfortunately, I thought the Patriots, to be honest, Steve, I thought it was going to be a Patriots win by 20 plus when Drake Maye was playing the way they were playing and the Jets started out the way they were playing. Drake got hurt. Jacoby came in. To Jacoby's credit, he got better after the first series or two, and I thought he played maybe his best game of the season.
Absolutely.
But I it was a little rough to start, which is understandable. And the Patriots absolutely deserve the credit for the win, but man, it was like watching the Jets implode, and the Patriots were just pulling the pin on that grenade, man. So give me your thoughts on all of that. I'm sorry, it was a little bit of a rant, but I just felt it was justified.
You're absolutely right. I was on a podcast last night down here in South Florida, and we had a mixture of guys from all over the country, which was awesome because you're getting, different perspectives from guys who write about different teams from all over. And one of the gentlemen who was there last night was a former NFL coach. He coached with Sean Payton in New Orleans, and he agreed with me 100%. And I was like, when you look at the, because they were asking me about the Jets Patriots game, I said, when you look at this Jets team, there's no way they should be 2-6, right? They have excellent running backs. They have tremendous wide receivers. Okay, they have a decent tight end. There's no way they should be 2-6, but they are a collection of talent and not a football team. There's no pulling together. That's why they're so ill-disciplined. That's why they're, so dysfunctional. And he was like, you're absolutely right. Nobody is rowing together in that organization right now. And it's a total mess. And it is. And it was easy to see. I mean, when you look at that game on paper, the Jets should have won by 20, because talent-wise, they're much, much better. But they don't play that way. And, like yourself, I love to see it. We have no love for the Jets here. And I'm not particularly an Aaron Rodgers fan at all. So, to me, and I'll say this, and then we'll move on to the Patriots. The Jets thought they could catch lightning in a bottle like Tampa did with Tom Brady.
Right.
But there's a big, big difference between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And that's that Tom Brady eats, sleeps, breathes football. When he was playing, that was the most important thing. Tom Brady, he was there working with the players before the season started. He was there for the mini camps, the OTAs, right? He was always there. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he missed mandatory mini camp because he wanted to go sit in a cave in Egypt,
Yep.
That is not building a team. And it's so obvious now, Those
It just
guys
looks
have
like
not.
it just looks like they're just like almost playing tug of war against themselves. You know what I mean? It's just a weird operation, and I mean top to bottom. But anyway, screw the Jets. I want to I want to talk about. I want to give the Patriots their credit. Okay, I just felt like we needed to dump on the Jets for a minute.
Oh
and
yeah, and
we could do a full show on it. I mean, I'll gladly go off, but I'm sure people who are listening want to hear us talk about what the Patriots did right. So let's start from the top, Steve. Look, there were some issues.
Sure.
Really not happy again with the kick coverage, whether kickoff and punts. The punts specifically had been an issue. Behringer has been a little erratic, I'd say, the last couple of weeks, but the coverage has been really bad. A couple of, you miss the first initial tackle and anything can happen. You saw that with Gibson's big return early. I think the silver lining, I guess, would be how the Patriots defense responded to being put in a bad position after a couple of good returns. So that was nice. That was nice to see. I thought Drake, we'll get to his concussion and everything here shortly, but I thought early he played great. I continue to be incredibly impressed with his poise and his decision making. He doesn't look scared or jumpy. Like, to go back to Mac Jones, and obviously Mac and Drake, you can't compare them from a physical trait standpoint or anything like that. Not even a personality standpoint. They're very different people, very different players. But I thought Mac, even when he was playing well, okay, and this is not a shot at Mac because he did play well at least early, he still looked a little uncomfortable in the pocket sometimes, had that Peyton Manning happy feet. You don't really see that with Drake. It looks like people were so worried about his footwork and all these things. And I just feel like, Steve, he looks like he has command of the offense. And I mean, obviously he's using his legs. The hit he got on the concussion, I thought it was a little bit of a late slide. I did think it was a missed call and kind of BS about how the whole thing went down. I do want to put that aside for later, like I mentioned. But at the same time, you saw what he can do with the legs. It's almost kind of weird to watch. In a way, as a little aside, it's almost weird to watch a Patriots quarterback with that kind of mobility. I just watching Tom Brady play and then watching Drake, and we've seen Cam and Mac. It's just been such a weird, like, Baskin Robbins kind of experience of a bunch of different flavors. But it's so weird to see Drake back there playing quarterback in his style. Again, it's not bad. I thought he looked really good until he was ruled out with the concussion.
Yeah, and I got some DMs because I said it should have been a penalty, and people were like, "That wasn't a dirty hit," and I was like,
close.
It wasn't a dirty hit because he did slide late, but
it should have been a penalty.
It should have been a penalty. It's still a penalty.
Both things can be true, by the way.
It was dirty. There can be two different things. It can be a penalty and not be dirty,
What that freaking Saints defensive lineman did to Justin Herbert, or tried to do, that
exactly
dirty.
That was dirty.
Okay, that is dirty. That's Mac Jones twisting, Brian Burns' ankle, a couple of years ago. That's dirty. That the hit on Mac Jones, or not Mac Jones, Jesus, the hit on Drake Maye in the back of the head, it was unfortunate, but it was a little bit of him sliding late, and it was the defender just trying to go ahead and lay the lumber, as he should, because he's a runner. I mean, if you run, that's the risk you're going to take. So
but it was, the first point of contact was his helmet and the back of Drake Maye's helmet, and the back of his neck. So that's a penalty.
Didn't you think it was weird though?
I'm not saying it was dirty, but it just, it was still a penalty. And
didn't you think it was weird? Didn't you think it was weird though that that it looked like, from my broadcast, vantage point, it looked like Drake got up a little slow, just a little slow, not like super slow, but he got up slower than usual. I felt like it looked like the referee checked and said, "Are you okay?" Drake said yes. Came off the field. From what Paul Perillo, friend of the show, was on over the summer, PatsFans.com, one of the best in the business. He mentioned that he, and I don't want to speak for him, so I hope I'm not,
paraphrasing.
Yes, thank you. He said that he felt like he saw Jacoby and Drake talking, and it looked like Jacoby asked, "Are you okay?" when Drake was on the sideline. Because it was weird, because if, from my vantage point, I'm watching on TV, and I saw him go off, and it was like 2, maybe 3 minutes before you heard anything about the independent, doctor who does the concussion protocol stuff. and then they had taken him to the tent, and then he went to the locker room, and then Drake Maye said, I forget who the sideline reporter was, but he said to the sideline reporter on CBS at halftime, he's not coming back. So I was kind of confused because it didn't really look like much. Once you see the hit again, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, he got hit in the back of the head. That's a real dangerous spot to be hit.
And his head snapped forward.
Yeah. So that's not great. I would say this too, Steve, like no quarterback, at least of this season, has come back and played the following game after having a concussion the previous one. It does look like Drake's going to participate in practice today. We are recording this on Wednesday, October 30th, right around noon Eastern. So there are reports that he's going to practice on a limited basis. Right. But there are several steps that he needs to go through in order to play in the game. I would put his percentage of playing at close to 20%. I think it's pretty low, which is unfortunate.
I would put it even lower than that.
Yeah, I think the fact that he's even participating on a Wednesday makes me feel more confident. Before I read that tweet from I think it was Mike Reese, before I read that tweet, I would have put it at closer to like 5%. But we have a couple of days. We'll see. I mean, obviously, there's no reason to jeopardize him. I do think that they have a chance to win this game coming up, which we'll talk about. But obviously, I'd feel a lot better about it if Drake was playing, versus the other way. Let's keep going though. Let's put the Drake stuff aside. Let's talk about the rest of the game here for a couple more minutes before we switch gears because we have a couple other things we want to talk about. So, Steve, from the game standpoint, the running game, the protection wasn't bad. I mean, Quinton Williams had a couple plays, but he wasn't as dominant as I would have expected him to be. I thought the offensive line for the Patriots did pretty well. If I don't want to do this because I don't usually like these arguments, but I do think this is fair. If you take out the quarterback rushing and you just go to the running backs, they were hovering right around 2 yards a carry. That's not good enough, especially in AVP's offense. And I thought the receiver drops, obviously an issue, big topic around the week. It should be. What are the two jobs of receivers, Steve? Name them. Two jobs.
Get open.
And?
Catch the football.
And what did they not do on this last week? They couldn't catch the ball. It's like, come on. I know everybody who's listening to the show knows the exact plays that we're talking about. Look, I think Booty, I think he kind of redeemed himself later in the game with some bigger plays. Doesn't excuse his earlier mistakes, but I thought he redeemed himself. KB, he's coming off an injury. I understand that. Sorry, bud. You got to catch that ball. I just thought they had way too many drops. Look, I think with Drake, this offense is watchable, which is nice. And it's exciting to see Drake progress. I think everyone feels that way. I don't want to speak for everyone. That's just how I feel. I'm excited to watch him play. At the same time, this offense is not talented enough to come over penalties, especially procedural drops. Like those things can't happen. You can't overcome those things with this kind of offense right now. It's good enough if they play a clean. If the Patriots offense plays a clean game and the defense is their usual self, they can be competitive. If they play over their skis in terms of like they're making big plays, they can any given Sunday. But you go ahead and you have some of the type of stuff that happened on Sunday, the drop passes, some of the mistakes. I mean, you should lose that game more often than not. They can't overcome those kind of things.
No, I agree. Excuse me. When I look at the game, the Patriots did run for 111 yards, but 54 of those were the two quarterbacks.
Right.
So, I mean, they're still not out of the woods yet. I like the fact that they finally had some continuity on the line. They got back for Darian Lowe. And who thought at the beginning of the season we'd be cheering the return from injury of Vidarian Lowe? But there it is, right? So with him back, the protection, they had the best protection that they've had all season. I believe the Jets only pressured the two quarterbacks 30% of their dropbacks, which is a season low. So, things are definitely trending up in the pass protection department, but they're still not opening the holes enough for the running backs. And those are things that need to get fixed. But the fact that, the guys are building some continuity, things are definitely looking up in that aspect. Now they just need to get the running game back under track. And again, the wide receivers did not help either quarterback on Sunday.
Nope.
You look at the paltry numbers they had throwing the football. I mean, 6 drops, that would have added quite a few yards, especially the one to Tyquan Thornton.
Oh, painful.
I thought that was arguably the best play that Drake Maye's had all season. He's looking down the field. He can't find anyone open. The pressure starts coming on. He scrambles out to his right. He gets squared down the field. He locates a target, and he throws a dime, 37 yards from the line of scrimmage, but it was closer to 45 from where he threw it. And it was right on a line and hits Tyquan Thornton in the hands. I thought, oh, my God, that reminded me of who? Josh Allen. Not comparing the two quarterbacks at this point, but that was a Josh Allen type play.
Well, they're not the same player. Like Josh
No.
is a very different and unique. He's a unicorn. He's a very different kind of player. I mean, he's so big. I mean, Drake is a good. He has definitely good size to him, but he's not Josh Allen size.
No.
And I think Drake has deceptive speed. When he turned the corner and scored on that, I think it was a 17-yard rushing touchdown.
17, yeah.
Yeah. When he turned that corner, I think it was a little deceptive to the defenders because they weren't expecting him to, because he runs kind of upright. So I don't think they were expecting him to kind of turn that corner and go. He did. Great play. Josh is a little bit, he's just kind of a moose. I always tell people I feel like he's a moose.
He's a moose that can run really fast.
And I mean that in literally the most respectful way possible.
Oh,
I think I mean, I have a ton of respect for how he's brought his game along, and he's a likable kid, and it just sucks he plays for Buffalo. I'm just happy we have a picture with him in a Patriots jersey, just to throw it back in their face.
But you can, you can identify the fact that he's really, really good.
Oh, yeah. But that throw Drake had, though, rolling out and tossing it on the numbers, I mean, that is the kind of play. You and I joked about this last year, and thankfully I haven't done it yet this year. I've looked at prospects, but I haven't looked at mock drafts. But last year we were talking about looking at mock drafts in October and into November. And Drake Maye was a topic of conversation between you and I offline and a little bit on the podcast last year. Early, like way early, like 5 months before the draft. So it was no surprise when we were both big fans of his coming in. That is the kind of throw. I'll say 3 things. That throw he had there, the scramble for the touchdown, and then just some of the poise he's shown, stepping into the pocket, kind of driving the ball in. He had a nice tight window throw to Hunter Henry. Those kind of throws. Look, I know it's frustrating that the Patriots record is what it is, and we don't have a ton of hope for them to win a ton more games this year. Those 3 throws validate, in my mind, why they should have taken him where they took him, meaning Drake, at that spot, because it shows the talent and the potential that he has. And if even if he doesn't play this week, if he can stay healthy and they can continue to see a rise out of him the rest of the year, that'll put so much wind in the sails of the rest of the organization. It'll be huge.
Yep. Because if you're a NFL free agent wide receiver, next year, you're looking at throws like that, and you're saying to yourself, this guy can get me the ball anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that, free agent wide receivers this year, were turned off. They had no idea who was going to be the quarterback. And that makes a difference, So I think that's a big thing. I just, I think he's validating everything we saw in front of him. And as Bill Parcells used to say, let's not put him in Canton just quite yet. Okay.
I'll try not to. I've already been working on his. I've already been working on his bust. Hopefully it looks better than the Dwayne Wade statue. But
I felt so bad for Dwayne Wade. That's such a horrible likeness.
It was just the face. It looked like they put his face in a microwave and it like melted. It was just
it was horrible. I felt bad for him. I'm not even a basketball fan, but anyway, back to Drake Maye. But all of the things that we were talking about at this time last year about him are the things that we're seeing now. He has tremendous mobility. He sees the field really, really well, and he's had his blips on the screen. Of course, he's a rookie. You expect to see those, but he's not making them time after time, and he has an absolute cannon for an arm. He can make any throw on the field.
Yep.
And those were things that the Patriots quarterbacks a year ago did not have. And, we're seeing that come to fruition with him. And it's only going to get better. Just like you said, they need to catch the football. He can't throw it and catch it, as Giselle said.
Oh, there's a TMZ topic if you want to get into that. But that's probably a different conversation for a different day because we got too much to get to. So real quick, Steve, on the game, again, I do want to give the Patriots credit for the win. I do think that there were a lot of issues with some of the play calls, some of the formations. I do think Brissett got better as the game went on. I thought he really played well down the stretch. That last drive for them to go ahead to score, I thought was absolutely that just takes balls. I'm sorry. That just takes balls by the quarterback and the rest of the team after all the mistakes they had. Again, I do think they deserve to win that game. I want to make that perfectly clear. I also think the Jets were implicit in that whole thing going down because they were a freaking disaster. But I want to give the Patriots credit for doing what they needed to do. They're a run first team, a run heavy team. They really couldn't get it going outside of the quarterbacks, as we both alluded to previously. They had some drops, they had some penalties. They overcame all those things and were able to matriculate the ball down the field and punch it in at the end to get the score. Yes, I think Greg Zerloin for the Jets, who went on IR today, not surprising. I'm surprised they even let him on the team plane on the way home because, honestly, he makes 2 kicks and we are talking about a Patriots loss. So all I'll say is this. I think it was a great win, a great rally for the team after Gerard's comments. I think there's probably a lot being made on a lot of different, stations or podcasts about how the team responds to, Mayo calling them soft. I think they were responding to themselves. I don't think this is a good football team. I didn't go into the season thinking the Patriots were going to be a really good football team, but I did think they had the potential to win 5, 6, even 7 games if they hit their potential. Right now they're at 2-6. 6, 7 wins looks like it's going to be, it would be a shocker to me at this point, but I do think they can be competitive. And I thought that they are showing that they kind of came together as a unit and they were to put together things when they were facing adversity. And honestly, that's probably my biggest takeaway from the game is hey, they came together. They won a game no one else thought they could win. I mean, I think they were almost 7-point underdogs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 7.5.
Yeah, they were like so give or take, depending on what sports book, let's call them a touchdown underdogs at home. It's like, come on, what are you going to do?
No, and going back to that, they played terrible in London. They had all this drama, right? Last week when they got back, rumors of players breaking curfew, going out drinking, and it affected their play in London. So we've heard all that. We've seen that. And then to top it off, their coach called them soft publicly. I thought they showed a ton of resilience. And, I think you have to give the defense a lot of credit. Granted, we talked about how dysfunctional the Jets are, but, you're missing all those pieces in the middle of your defense. Christian Barmore, Jawan Bentley, and then both starting safeties. Both of those guys are out. And the fact that they were able to stem the tide a little bit with the Jets. For the 3 games prior to the Jets game, they were allowing an average of 185 yards on the ground. And the Jets got 112. That's not great defense, but it's a heck of a lot better than it was. And they didn't dominate in the trenches. That was the big thing.
Yep.
I thought that, guys like Marte Mapu, Del Pettis, Jalen Hawkins, I thought all of those guys stepped up in a really positive way. Hawkins had a gift interception that he dropped, but why should the wide receivers have a monopoly on that, right? So, but
oh man,
yeah, but you know what I'm saying. I thought it was a really good effort, and Rodgers was held to 224 net yards throwing the ball. Those aren't great numbers.
is he cashed? Is he done?
I think he's done.
I think physically he's not moving around in the pocket as much. Devon Godchow was very outspoken about that. And I think mentally, I think he's going to start to get checked out. I think the only thing that gave him a little bit of shot of life was them bringing in Devontae, who's one of his best friends. And I respect that, in terms of like wanting your best friend to come join you. And Devontae obviously wasn't in a good situation in Las Vegas, but now he's in a situation with the Jets, but at least they're together. I don't know. Either way, no sympathy for me. No crocodile tears.
And
I give a shit. So
they're 0-3 since they fired their coach. So.
Yeah, it was all Robert Saleh.
But I just think I think we're selling the Patriots' effort a little short. I know that the national papers were lambasting the Jets, and rightfully so.
It both can be true, though, Steve. Both can be true.
But you have to give the Patriots a lot of credit after what happened in London. I think they showed a ton of resilience, and I think Jacoby Brissett played his best game of the year. Granted, he came in cold. He got no snaps now last week because Drake's now the starter. So the first couple of drives they look stale. But I thought the turning point in the game was the punt return from Marcus Jones.
Yeah, because he gave a shot in the arm that they needed for sure.
Yep, that was just like a big breath of an oxygen tank for the offense. It seemed like after that, they started getting their act together quickly. After that, the 5 plays, 26 yards, touchdown. Then they scored twice in the fourth quarter.
Can we get him? We said this. I was telling you this off air yesterday. Can we please get him a package on offense? Like I look. He's a smaller guy. So him against Garrett Wilson, he was abused. He didn't have a good game in coverage. I that's fine. Okay, I understand that. Garrett Wilson is a really good young player, and Marcus has his limitations physically. I do think he can play in the slot against smaller guys. You give him a guy, who's a little more compact, I'll say. I feel confident in his ability. We know what he can do on special teams. Offensively, we've seen when they give him the ball in space, what he can do. We saw it against the Bills. So it's like, it's like I'm not saying that he has to get the ball in all three phases, but why not use his ability? Get him a package where you're giving him some jet sweeps, some bubble screens, some quick slants, something to go ahead and get him the ball in space and set it up like a fucking punt return. I didn't mean to cuss. Sorry, Miguel. I'll put dollar in the swear jar. All right. But like, it's like get him the ball in space because he is dynamic with it. But before we turn the page, Steve, and we do need to because we've been going long on this. I just want to give a couple of credits to a few different players who started rough and I thought finished strong. Jacoby Brissett, thought the first series or two, again, a little rough. And then I thought, as we both have said so far, he played his best game of the season on the way out. I thought he really kind of stepped up and grew into it as he got warmed up. Christian Ellis, really boneheaded PI call. Honestly, played a really great game aside from that. It was a really bad call.
And even that one was a little ticky-tacky. I mean,
I don't think so. I think that one, of all the PI calls, that one to me was the most egregious.
Well,
he was already pushing the guy out of bounds.
The one against Gonzalez was invisible.
Okay, so that one was the worst. Christian Ellis would be, 2. But the Gonzalez one was bad because it was a phantom call. There was nothing to be called. It was a joke. The Ellis one was just, to me, dumb, but that's a different, kind of side conversation. But I thought he played really well, after that point of the matter. Kayshon Boutte, really bad, a couple bad plays early, came up when you needed him most. Yep. And he's a weird player, Steve.
Twice on that last drive.
Yeah, huge catch at the end. And then what was that? Was that the 2-point?
No, he caught that 34-yard pass to put him down in there.
Yeah.
And then he was the one that caught the pass that put him down near the goal line.
Oh, yeah. So they could run it in with Stevenson.
Yeah.
Right. So I think with Boutte,
and I thought he scored. I don't know.
I think Boutte's a weird player because you can almost see why he was supposed to be drafted in the first round and why he was drafted where he was drafted. Was it the 6th round? You can see it in both sides. If he can get if he can get a little more consistent, he could be a legitimate contributor and player going forward. He just has to go ahead and clean up that little stuff. So, we'll see. But I just thought there were a couple players that, like those three I mentioned, that faced a little adversity early and overcame it and progressed and made plays down the stretch. And I thought that was cool. So let's step aside here for podcast purposes. Okay. I want to get to a couple side topics, and then Steve and I are going to go ahead and do our game prediction, talk about a couple other game predictions, give our 3 keys, and go from there as we always do. We will be back right after this. All right, we're back here on Patriots 4th and 2. Derek Havens, Steve Balestrieri here, both from PatsFans.com. Want to give a shout out to Russ Goldman and Ian Logue as always. Please, if you're listening, just take a second to subscribe to us on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. Keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Steve, let's talk about the Drake Maye concussion real quick. I don't want to get into whether it should have been a penalty or not or whatever. Plain and simple question. Should he play this week? Even if obviously he has to be cleared whether he plays or not. Assuming he's cleared, would you play him or would you rest him for this week?
I would rest him for this week because there's no sense in pushing him right now. I mean, You're not in the playoff hunt, all right, and you don't want to jeopardize his future by having him get back-to-back concussions in successive weeks. So, just to be on the safe side, even if he passes everything, I'd let him fly with the team down to Nashville, but I would make him inactive this week, just to be on the safe side. And I know I would love to see him play this week against the Titans, but there's no sense in it. So I think they could still win this game even with Jacoby Brissett. So, I think that, let's err on the side of caution here because you're looking at long-term future for the guy.
Yeah, to me, Steve, I'm torn. I do agree with you. On the whole, it's like, why push him? I want to see him. I guess selfishly, I want to see him out there because I want to see
Yeah,
him keep playing
absolutely.
because he's played really well. At the same time, I would also say it's like, man, they have a tough schedule down the stretch. This is a winnable game. I want to see them win, and he
Exactly.
definitely gives them a better chance to win. But you got to look at the, you don't want to get stuck in the micro. You want to look at the macro, and the macro to me is let him rest, and I think that's going to be where it goes. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if he played this week. I really would be.
Yeah, I don't want to see him, the team push it in regards to him coming back. I know, we all want to see him play. We're excited to see, what he brings to the table. But looking at the long term, I don't think there's any reason to push it. And like I said before, I think they could still win this game regardless.
Oh, I agree. Let's get into the Joshua Uche trade to Kansas City, Steve. He was traded yesterday, October 29th, to the Chiefs for a 6th-round pick. This caused a lot. Honestly, honestly, it was a little bit more of a kind of more banter than I expected on my Twitter timeline. There are people who are really torn. It was Moses parting the Red Sea here. Apparently, this is the
Yeah.
two sides divided. I'm going to be honest. I had no problem with it. You're looking at a player who was playing about 35-40% of the snaps, rotational piece. At best, he's a pass rusher. We were hoping he was going to be more coming out of Michigan. I loved the pick when it came out. He just never really developed. And I know it's relatively the same system from Bill to Mayo and Covington, but he just really didn't find a space. He's on a 1-year contract expiring at the end of the year. The Patriots aren't going to the playoffs. I hate to break it to everybody, but I mean, it's one of those things where it's like some people look at it and say it's a 6th-round pick, just keep him. I get that. At the same time, I would say, dude, you're rebuilding and you have so many holes, so many needs to fill. You need every draft asset you can get. I have no problem with the trade. I don't care. It was to Kansas City. I'm sure he'll thrive there. Okay. so maybe he'll do well. But to me, Steve, it's all about collecting assets as you try to rebuild this roster. And I have to think that they looked at it and said, he's not part of our future, so we might as well go ahead and capitalize on it. And I have my last little bit before I go to you would be, brace yourself, folks, because I would be shocked if this was the last player that goes out the door before the trade deadline. I would expect at least 2 more, and that will be our next part of this conversation. Steve, to you.
Yeah. Again, I saw so many negative comments about the Patriots trading him for a 6th, and I'm looking at, again, we're not looking at the, as you said, micro. We're looking at the macro. Okay, he really had one half season that was absolutely outstanding. 2 years ago, if you remember, he hadn't done much in the first half of the season. He really came on in that second half, and he was piling up the sacks opposite Judon, and the two of them were just absolute dynamite, I thought. Okay, so there's that. Prior to that, he didn't do much. After that, he did nothing. I mean, last year with Judon out, everyone was expecting him, hey, now it's his time to shine. He can show he can be that guy. And he had, I think it was 3.5 sacks last year. This year, he bet on himself. He took a 1-year deal with the Patriots, and he only has 2 sacks, right?
Yep.
And So I'm like, he has never developed into that player we all hoped he was going to. And I think people still have blinders on. They were expecting this dynamic pass rusher. He's never developed into a 3-down player,
Nope, never has.
and he's still a liability against the run. And, I was speaking with Ian Logue about this really just
What's up, Ian?
seconds before we went live. I was speaking to him on the phone, and, he has a theory. He says he has nothing to back it on, but he wonders if, Gerard Mayo talked about guys freelancing out there. He wonders if that was one of the guys, because he's in the final year of a contract and he was trying to, build up some numbers for himself to basically, get a new deal. But Uche was never the guy that we thought he was going to be. And, and he walks at the end of the season because they're not going to re-sign him, or they weren't going to. They get nothing. So the fact that they can get some draft capital, and who cares if it's a 2026 pick, because they can package that in April with something else and move up or make a trade or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're absolutely right when you say they're desperate need of draft capital, and they weren't going to get anything high for him.
No.
So
no, and let's keep this quick. And I'll give you a couple of names. I think KJ Osborne. I think Jonathan Jones, although I think that one's less likely. Devon Godchow. Those are the three names that come to mind to me when I think about players that could be moved for some kind of capital. And I'm not sure it's going to be a lot. I'm sure it's going to be, similar things. I think John Jones is less likely, but I do think he's dealing with stuff. He hasn't really played to his level, but I think Godchow specifically and KJ Osborne are both high trade candidates for people moving at the deadline. Anyone come to mind for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll say this. I don't think they're going to move Godchow. I put that possibility as really low, just my personal opinion.
Okay.
Because they identified him as a guy they wanted to help build around, in the front seven. They gave him a new contract. They can't afford to get rid of him right now. So
it's one of those things though, Steve, though, where it's like, yeah, they can't really afford to, but they kind of can, because they're going to end up in the relatively similar spot. Like, it's not like Gotcha's going to cost them a win or a loss necessarily. Even if it was one win, it's like, does it really matter? Or are they trying to go ahead and stack assets? Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing out those names as guys that have been thrown out from anywhere from Diana Rossini at The Athletic to Jeff Howe also at The Athletic. Yeah. I've heard some other people, some other beat reporters. I'm just throwing out names that seem to be kind of whispers across the social media and insider front.
Well, I would definitely think Godchow would be a player whose name gets sent to the Patriots. Hey, are you willing to part with this guy? Because I could definitely see that happening for teams trying to gear up for a playoff run. Because you can always use a big dude that can eat up double teams in the middle and help stuff the run. I just don't think that he was one of the guys they rewarded because they think he's part of a future here. And you got to have some veterans. It can't be all just young guys. So I really don't think he's going to be the guy. Now, Jonathan Jones, absolutely, because he's kind of banged up right now. And if you looked Sunday, the reason Marcus Jones really struggled against Garrett Wilson is they've made him the number 2 corner on the perimeter for this game. So I think they were seeing if Marcus Jones can handle it. But I think Jones will be a guy that teams will look for. I definitely agree. Osborne, if somebody would take Tyquan Thornton, I believe he would. And
Yeah,
I go back to Kendrick Bourne, going back to the 49ers. I know he said he wants to retire here in New England, but the 49ers are banged up, and they already know what Bourne can do. So, I would put him in there in that mix as well.
I will just say this before we get to our Titans preview, which we need to kind of do rapid fire because we've been long-winded on so much to talk about. There are some rumors the Patriots could be adding at the trade deadline too. And I do think they are looking at T. Higgins. So I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm just looking at some reports. I texted a couple of people. I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to happen at all. I'd still put it at a low percentage, but I think they're looking at T. Higgins. So I would watch that Bengals situation, especially if they lose this week. But Steve, let's go
again. I mean, it makes sense, right? The offensive line is starting to solidify a little. Not saying they're great.
It's almost like if you keep the same 5 guys together, that you might get some results that are good. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. The pressure numbers have been gradually going down.
Yep.
So, you bring in a guy like T. Higgins, that solves actually a big problem that you're looking at for the future, because they don't have that number one guy. They have a couple of young guys that they can build around, but having that number one type guy, that would help a lot. And boy, I think Drake Maye would be even more productive. You put a guy like that on the team because he's going to elevate those other guys. So if they can catch the football, but I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's get to the Titans, Steve, because we gotta really move through this here because I have a couple other things that I want to talk about too. So we gotta hurry. I don't want to. I know Ian and Russ get mad when we go too long, and you and I could do a 3-hour show, but here we are.
We could do the Joe Rogan 3-hour thing.
That Trump interview was gold. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I thought it was.
No, it was great. I mean, Joe Rogan has a way. And I think this is why he's so popular. He can do an interview without conducting an interview. He makes it conversationalized.
Yeah.
So it's just like, hey, a couple of guys talking at the bar, or, a guy and a woman talking at a bar where he's asking questions, but it's more conversational. And that's why I think he's so popular.
Yeah, and that's honestly how I try to, or we try to do the show here. It's like just like a phone call, like you and I be having offline. I mean, it's I try to keep it as kind of light. I don't like it too structured. I want to keep it on the rails. When Russ was on with us all the time, he was so good at keeping us kind of on the rails, but at the same time, I like to have free flow. It just makes it just kind of easier. At least I think. If you feel differently, then leave it in the comments. And I'm not I'm not upset to take criticism. I can take it. I promise. I got a strong chin.
We've had plenty.
Oh yeah, of course. My wife's half Irish, half Italian, and I got a daughter coming in 3 weeks. I got to be tough-skinned. I have no other choice. So let's get to the Titans, Steve. I'll start with my opening thoughts on the game, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I would just say that I would love to see Drake play this game. If Drake was playing in this game, I would feel pretty confident, actually. More confident than I probably should. Teams that have played the Lions have gone on the following week and gotten demolished. I mean, look, I don't have the raw numbers in front of me, but if you look at who the Lions have played and what happens to the team that plays the Lions, win or lose the following week, I mean, it's a staggering number. And they lost 52-14. Which I'm really happy I took the Lions in my survivor pool last week, but that's aside. Okay.
I picked the Lions to win this week as well.
There you go.
Oh,
So
last week. I mean,
the Titans are a mess. The defense has played pretty good in spots. Not last week, obviously. They got 52 hung up on them, but they also had some special teams that added to that, but they still hung up a good amount of points offensively. I think that the Titans, it looks like Will Levis, I don't think he's going to play. So that'll be interesting. I think I'm going to operate, Steve, in this whole preview under the notion that Drake is not going to play, specifically because of the concussion and the protocol. And even though he's going to be participating, on a limited basis this week, I just don't see him playing, especially when no other quarterback who's had a concussion has played the following week this year. So I'm going to just operate that he's not going to play. Give me your opening take on the Titans. We don't have to do the whole offense-defense thing, but just give me your opening take on how you feel like the Patriots can go through this game and what matchups you feel good or bad about.
Yeah, I mean, their defense, as you said, hasn't played that badly. I know, they got spanked last weekend, but, the offense isn't holding up their share of the load there, which, the Patriots can certainly sympathize with, especially earlier in the season, right?
All right.
But I think their quarterback situation is, Will Levis wasn't very good before getting hurt or injured, benched. I don't know. But Mason Rudolph hasn't been any better.
Mm-hmm.
And he threw a couple of picks last week. So I'm looking at that as, a major bummer for them. And I think this game is very winnable. They're only 1-6, so it's not like they're setting the world on fire. But
isn't it crazy, Steve? I'm sorry to interject. Isn't it crazy? There's 16 teams, obviously, in the AFC. You got 32 teams, 2 conferences, 16-16. The AFC was thought going in to be the stronger conference. I still think they have the 2 or 3 best teams in the entire league in the conference. But 7 of the AFC teams, so 7 out of 16,
almost
have 2 wins or less.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's crazy.
It's insane.
That's almost half the conference.
Yeah.
When I look at the Titans passing offense, they're 31st in the league, only in front of the Patriots.
Yep.
And, the Patriots, the first 5 weeks were only averaging 120 yards throwing the football. Now, the last couple of games, they've upped that to now they're throwing for like 150, 149.9. So the passing offense for the Patriots is starting to get a little bit better. They still have a long, long way to go, but they're getting better.
Almost like if Drake Maye plays more, offense is better. Although I don't want to kick dirt on Cobb. I feel like he played,
there was a lot of
game for him. I don't want to kick dirt on him, but the optical, the eye test will tell you how the offense looks one way or another.
And it helps the past couple of weeks that they're protecting better. It's been steadily going down a little at a time. Last Sunday was the lowest yet. With the exception of Quinnen Williams, the Jets really weren't getting a ton of pressure on them. Quinnen Williams is who he is, and he's one of the best in the business. But he had a big game, I thought. But I'm looking at the defense of the Titans isn't that bad.
Look, Jeffrey Simmons is an issue.
Oh yeah.
Talk about Quinnen Williams. I'm worried about him. I think he could be a game wrecker for you, and cause some serious issues. And I think the Titans just defensively, there's not a whole lot of household names, I would say, but they play well together. And if you're a Titans fan, that's what you're hanging your hat on right now, is that the defense is pretty freaking solid.
Yeah, their pass defense is I think they're number one right now in yards allowed.
Yeah, in a couple different categories, they're in the top 3 or 4. So
Yeah,
they're
but
definitely up there.
for some reason they give up a ton of points,
Yeah,
and
they're the bend and break defense. That's a bad spot to be.
yeah, I mean they're not giving up a ton of yardage, but they're giving up a lot of points. So,
But you know why that would be?
well,
Because the
I think
offense is so
it's
bad. It's putting them in a
the
hole.
offense is turning the ball over. I think that that doesn't help. Their special teams are bad.
Yep.
So they're giving up a ton of return yards. So, they're right now. All right, the Patriots are -1 in turnover differential, which is just slightly lower than middle of the road. They're -13.
Yeah.
So I mean that is a ton of turnovers that you're giving up. So
Right.
I think special teams for the Patriots. I know they've given up some yardage the last couple of weeks, but I think the possibility for returns this week will definitely play in.
Marcus Jones, you are up, sir. Let's do it, baby.
Mm-hmm. Come
um,
on down, because the
let's get
price
to
is
the 3
definitely
keys.
right.
Let's get to the 3 keys. I'll let you go first, and then we're gonna pick a couple of games rapid fire and give our scores and call it a day. So 3 keys. Let's go real quick.
Yeah, I think for the Patriots, you got to get back to running the ball this week. I know they've been pass protecting better, and we've been harping on this for several weeks. But I think that's a big key, because if they can run the ball a little bit, it will definitely help their passing game. I think this week, number 2 key is you have to force the ball into Mason Rudolph's hands. I mean, they're not lighting it up through the air, and he's been prone to turning it over. So I think that's a big one right there. It's just the turnover margin. You have to win the turnover battle. And the third, special teams. I think special teams will play a big role in this week's game, especially if the Patriots come away with a win. I think you're going to see, a couple of big returns on there, and that's what they need. What better way to help your offense, which is still searching for an identity, than get a couple of short fields or even a score or two?
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with all those. I'm going to start with the rushing. I think from a rushing standpoint, I want to say the Titans are around 4.3 yards a carry allowed. They're one of the better teams. The Patriots running backs really struggled, hovering right around 2 yards a carry last week. You got to get back on track here. Gibson was seldomly used. It can't be the quarterbacks running around. Not that Jacoby's a huge scrambler, assuming again he's a starter, but it can't be the quarterbacks running around. They got to get involved. I know Ramondre's not 100%, but they have to figure out again to get that running game on track, because that's how the blood flow of the AVP offense really goes through. And I totally agree with you on that first key. Not to be redundant, but I do think it's important. To me, the other thing is, the passing game has got to be efficient. And the Titans have allowed the least amount of receiving yards throughout the entire year to this point of any other team through the air. They also have allowed the least amount of first downs through the air. So what that tells you is that their passing defense is incredibly strong, and with all the drops the Patriots have had, they have to be efficient. They're not going to get a ton through the air, and if they're going to be playing with one hand behind their back with Jacoby, no offense to him, but without Drake, now you're looking at a team that not only are you facing a team with a very strong a very strong pass defense, but you're also with your backup quarterback that's a little limited, with receivers that are a little limited, that have also had problems with drops in the last week. It's not a good recipe. So they really need to make sure their passing game is efficient. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just can't have the sloppiness of the drops or whatever. I'm tired of some of these routes it's a 3rd and 8 and they're cutting the routes off at 6 yards. Can't happen. It just can't happen. Third thing to me will be special teams. And you talked about it as well. I think this could be a big Marcus Jones game. I want to see him go ahead and rip it up a little bit. I do think they have the opportunity to win it, but I do think that they'll need to help. They'll have to kind of set themselves up for success in that front too. So I'm going to go with those 3. Steve, give me your prediction for the game.
Yeah, I've been saying all week, this is a game that they can win. The Titans are 1-6 for a reason. And, even though the game will be in Tennessee, if they cut down on their, self-imposed mistakes and sloppy play, I think they can win this game, and I think they will. I think they're going to go down. They might get a couple of big plays out of their special teams this week. And I think they win 24-20.
Okay, well, I also think the Patriots are going to win this week. If Drake Maye was playing, I would honestly say 27-16, maybe 17. Because Jacoby's playing, I'm going to say Patriots win 20-16. That's what I have this week.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, so I would feel better if Drake was playing, but real quick, rapid fire to wrap up the show, Steve. We got tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football, Texans at the Jets. Are we feeling like the Jets are totally done? Are the Texans going to roll through? What are you thinking?
Houston,
yeah, I got Houston as well. I want to get your thoughts as well on another interesting game for me. This is selfish, people, so I apologize, but I'm thinking about taking the Ravens in the Survivor pool. They're at home, coming off a really bad loss towards the Browns. Shout out to Jameis Winston. That was awesome. The Ravens are at home. Broncos coming in. Who do you like in that game?
Yeah, after last week's game, I like the Ravens at home.
Yeah, I feel like, man, they're so good. When they're on, they are on. But, man, when they just fall flat sometimes. They're just so inconsistent. It's just like, who's going to show up that day? You just don't know. Last game I want to get to is Lions at Packers. I feel like this game is really fun. The Lions are really, Jordan Love has the groin strain. The Packers, I think, LaFleur has done a really nice job with them. Obviously, Dan Campbell on the other side done a great job with the Lions. They seem to be kind of rolling with a full head of steam. Who do you like in this game, Steve? It's in Lambeau, but I almost feel like I'm leaning Lions.
Yeah, I'm taking Detroit in this. I love what Dan Campbell's done with the Lions. I mean, and I just think they're a really, really good football team.
I just think he brings just an energy and a vibe, and they come in with this toughness and this mentality, and they win in the trenches. They win in the trenches, and as much as you see some crazy things on the outside, and the games are played on the edges at times between the tackles, the edge defenders, the receivers, the corners. Sometimes it does come down to as simple as just playing in the trenches, and that really where the game starts. I think people forget, maybe the running game is not as important as it was 20 years ago, but you still have to be able to run the ball. You still have to be able to stop the run. You still have to get after the quarterback. You still have to protect the quarterback. Their fundamentals are still there. Even if the game is still more like basketball on grass now, I still think it's a little different. I'm going with the Lions as well. I think they're a tougher team.
And we were talking about special teams. The Lions return game.
Oh, yeah.
I expect that to be really good again this week.
Oh, the kid last week, I forget his name, and I apologize, but I saw the video
Fantastic.
of him getting a game ball. Oh, he was phenomenal. I mean, he was just incredible. I just thought that was awesome. So shout out to the Lions, man. It's really cool. I mean, this is gonna date you a bit, okay? But being 34 years old, the Lions have like really, especially when I started watching football like really heavy when I was like 9, 10 years old, the Lions have sucked my entire basically football life, and now to see them being like good, it's actually really cool to see. And I think I can really respect what the GM, the front office, Dan Campbell, everything has done over there. I think they've totally turned the ship, and it's cool to see. I mean, they're coming out, and they are a tough as nails football team. Steve, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I was just going to make one quick thought. We were just talking about the Lions.
Sure.
Dan Campbell's first season, they started off 0-10-1.
Mm-hmm.
And look at it with them right now. So,
yep.
It's shows that sometimes teams with patience are better off.
I agree. I think some people in this fan base need to listen to that as well. So my only final thoughts are that I hope Drake Maye is okay, and I want to see him get back on the field as soon as possible. If it's Jacoby this week, which we are expecting, then hopefully he goes out there. But I do think this is a Patriots. It's funny. I heard a lot of comments about the Jets was the last possible winnable game, coming off the heels of this game, and I just find that laughable. I don't think the Patriots are going to win 7, 8, 9 games, but I do think that they're more competitive than their record shows. And they've had some inconsistencies for a couple different reasons. But from a Patriots fan standpoint, the most important thing is Drake Maye's development. And the second most important thing is the young players' development. So let's ride it out. It doesn't matter any given Sunday. There's going to be other winnable games on the schedule. And I think that they can hopefully build off this. And I think they go into Tennessee and get a win, as we both predicted. So I'm looking forward to that. I just want to make sure I mention this one more time. Please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. Keeps us high in the podcast ranking so other Patriots fans can find us. I want to thank Steve Balestrieri for joining me as always. I'm Derek Havens, both represented by PatsFans.com, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Before we shut it off, thanks again for Todd for all the comments.
Yeah, shout out to Todd.
We weren't showing them. We got sidetracked a little bit, but we really appreciate it, man.
Yep, appreciate it, Todd. Sorry about that.
Let's go, Pats.
See you guys next week.